Swann, Billy Covington, Donal Ware with you here on this post-game show, and just another tough loss, fellas, for North Carolina A&T. And we were talking a little bit in the post-game show about what the Aggies need to do. You've got 2 weeks to prepare for Norfolk State, who's coming off a loss 41-9 earlier today at the hands of Temple, an old MEAC rival, and to kind of get back on the right foot. But there's a lot that has to go on offensively, particularly not necessarily at the quarterback position, but in the passing game as a whole.
I agree, Don, that, you can't put it all on the quarterback. And, from a coaching standpoint, one of the things that you do, first of all, you have to identify your problems. And once you identify your problems, you have to figure out if they are solvable or not. And that's a situation that I think A&T finds itself in now. As you said, we have a bye week next week, and you look at some of the problems they have, especially offensively, and whether or not they're solvable is something that the coaching staff is going to have to decide. And I know in Billy's interview with Brian at halftime, he was saying that, we have to be patient because this is a new league and, new teams. And it's one thing to say that, but it's another thing to actually do it. So the Aggies really have some big challenges ahead of them as they move into the rest of the season.
Look at the running game, maybe not as effective today. There were some moments, Billy, in the running game. But we knew it was going to be tough to run against this Phoenix defense that came in against two tough opponents in Wake Forest and in Gardner-Webb, giving up about 120 yards rushing per game. Even though A&T, we had some success, in the previous two games, it was sort of tough going today.
It was tough going for the Aggies, and I think one of the things that we mentioned earlier is even though we are small defensively, especially on the line, we had just too many 3 and outs. The defense goes to the bench, get some water and some oxygen. The next thing you know, we are in a punting position, and they're back on the field again. So we're going to have to generate a little more offense. And patience is the name of the key. This is brand new for North Carolina A&T, running back wise and passing wise. So I think the offensive coordinators, the quarterback coach, everybody got to get together on some powwow and see if we can rectify the situation that we're presently in. And Al, one of the things I wanted to ask you, being a coach in the past, could this be wearing on the Aggies mentally that they're just not competitive enough in these football games? And if so, how can you correct that?
Well, of course it has a negative effect on you mentally when you are not able to do some of the things that you thought you were going to be able to do. And, for example, you look at total offense going into the fourth quarter. We had run 36 plays for only 72 yards. I mean, that's 2 yards a play. And it is, I don't care what league you play in, it's very, very difficult to win when you have stats like that. So it is very demoralizing, but you got to hang in there. You can't give up. You got to keep plugging away and trying to find some answers to some of these problems. And so this is why that bye week really comes as a very good time for A&T.
Of course, you can type your question or comment in the chat. Bricky's grandfather asked, why was there not a change at quarterback?
Well, I'm sure that's the coach's decision. As Coach Brown told you, they evaluate each quarterback after a week of practice, and for some reason, he just chose to stay with Yeager the entire ball game. I assume he thought that Yeager gave them the best chance to win, and so they decided not to make a change.
Earthful says our left guard and tackle were getting beat all night on the pass rush, which, Yeager was definitely under duress tonight. But not only that, the running game couldn't really get it going either.
Well, when you have a very, very difficult time running the football, it has a total effect. And I think one of the things that we saw tonight in terms of Elon's defense, especially against certain formations, they had eight. Sometimes they had 9 guys in the box, which makes it very, very difficult to run the football. Now, when they do that, they're saying that we know you can't throw the ball against us, and so there are several reasons why we can't do that. So it's back to the drawing board and try to figure out some answers to some of these challenges that we face.
Timothy says football is not new to these players. Please stop saying this is new. Han says, where is our offense? Better question is, what is our offensive philosophy?
Well, those are 2 good questions, but when we say we realize that football is not new to these players, but the conference that they're going into is new to these players, and it whole different set of skills involved in terms of not only size but the type of player that you have, and so that is something that they're going to have to address in the future.
Jalen Hampton, 16 carries, 153 yards on the day, and Elon, 49 carries for 260 yards, 49 carries to only 17 passes, and really just ran it, tough and hard all night against the Aggies.
And that really makes a statement, Don, because one of the things that we can say about A&T in the past is that they have always been really tough against the run. And the challenge that they faced tonight, and they're going to continue to face, is that they're going to be undersized. I mean, you talked to the coach from Elon before the game in the interview, and he said this was the smallest defense that they've seen all year. And so this is, you can't coach size. I mean, you either have it or you don't. And this is going to be a problem we're going to face in every game we go into in the Coastal Athletic Association. We're going to be going up against teams that are much bigger than we are up front.
You look at A&T, just at 143 yards of total offense on 52 plays. It's not even 3 yards per play, 62 of those yards passing. Zach Yeager, if you look at the numbers, 10 of 25, 62 yards, no touchdowns. He had 2 interceptions. He was sacked 3 times. One of those interceptions, not his fault. He also had 3 balls at the minimum dropped on him tonight.
I mean, you got to take that in consideration. You're right. I mean, the pass to the tight end was a beautiful throw, and tight end just didn't catch it. The ball creamed off his hands, and Elon made the big interception. So you can't blame that on the quarterback, but that's who gets the blame a lot of times. And hopefully, with a week of work, they can solve some of these problems.
Jerry says, let's face it, A&T does not have many quality players. They just have to rebuild, not the clean players coach promised. I mean, there's some talent on this team, though. I mean, there is some talent on this team. Obviously, you're trying to work through the quarterback situation. Looks like Yeager's going to be the guy, could be the guy for sort of the foreseeable future. But, I mean, you've got that running back room is really, really good. And the offensive line got beat tonight. Let's give Elon some credit, too. That's a good A&T offensive line.
There's no doubt. We said many times coming into this season, the strength of the Aggie offense was that offensive line. But, tonight they just ran up against a team where they got outplayed. And, that happens sometimes. So, again, a week off, do some self-scouting, identify your problems, see if you can come up with some solutions to your problems.
Lamont says, my Aggies were dominated in the trenches. Do we have a full-time strength and conditioning coordinator? Yes. The Aggies do have that. Anthony says, guys, look, let's not keep making excuses. I don't care what conference we play in. There must be execution, blocking, tackling, fundamentals at the D1 level is a must. So, a lot of Aggie fans frustrated right now. I think this is a process. This is a process. You lost a lot of guys. You lost your 3 best players from last year. It's not to make excuses. I mean, it is what it is. You lost your 3 best players. You've got a new coach that's coming in, and we know we've been about winning. I mean, even last year with a 7-4 record, another winning season. But it's going to take some time for Coach Brown and his staff to get acclimated to the players, and maybe this week off helps in that regard. But this is not. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Yeah, I agree with you, Don, in terms of it being a process. And some people may not realize it, but when you go from one conference to another, and that conference is really a step above what you've been doing or playing, it really does take time to acclimate yourself to that. And so, as we said earlier, you're going to have some patience. Coach Brown mentioned that earlier this year, that it's going to take time for him to get the type of players in here that he wants, that he thinks can compete in the CAA. So it's just going to probably be a very tough year for Aggie fans everywhere.
Chris says at this point, I'm looking for growth each game. Which is definitely something you want to see. Elon was this is a solid football team,
Yeah.
and you saw that against Wake Forest, and then coming back to only lose by a touchdown to Gardner-Webb last week.
I agree. You want to see improvement every game, but it's a situation where, how do you measure that improvement? And we saw tonight that, as you mentioned, Donal, this was a very tough team for us to play against, because their strength was probably our weakness, and they exploited that. They, as you said, they really did something that we're not used to seeing teams do against A&T, and that's really effectively run the football. But they had a big size advantage up front. They had an excellent running back, and those combinations can really be deadly, and we saw it. And so hopefully we can see some improvement as we get ready to go play Norfolk State.
And unfortunately, Al, this is going to be the entire year here. Once your film exchange, everyone can see that you're a little small up front, and you got to take advantage of that. So we're going to look at this when we go to Norfolk in 2 weeks, and when we come back home and take on Villanova, we're going to look at this same thing. We're going to have the same problem the entire year. And as you indicated, you just can't teach size. And when you are 30, 35 pounds short a man on the offensive line, that is not good.
Timothy says our tackling has been poor all season thus far. And I'm not exactly sure who says need to see progress week to week at this point. Kimball says we have to look to coach getting his guys in here and building the team he wants for the future, which, again, as we pointed to, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon.
And I agree, and someone last week mentioned the transfer portal. Every team doesn't have the resources to bring in 86 guys like they did out of Colorado. That's something that we have to deal with who we have right now, and going forward in the year. And I think they'll work it out. It's going to be difficult, but they got a week off, and this gives you time to really take a real reflective look at yourself. And as I said, Don, one of the big things is after you identify the problems, now you got to find some solutions, and that's where the problem is. What are the solutions? And that's what they're going to have to deal with in this off week.
It's Venice asked, was there any growth in this game?
Well, I think from a standpoint of growth, one of the things, it's probably a very disappointing game because we thought we were going to be able to run the football. And, given the stats that you just did in terms of we were unable to run the football. And we only had we rushed the ball 27 times for 81 yards. And in terms of passing, we were 10 for 25. In total offense, 143 yards. And, no matter how you cut it up, it's going to be very, very difficult to win with those stats.
Timothy asks, how do we match up against Norfolk? Norfolk's lost today 41-9, lost the first game of the season to Virginia State. That was a big upset, but came back the next week to beat Hampton, which I thought was a significant win.
Right.
And it turned out to be even more significant because Hampton came from behind today to beat Howard. So I think we played Norfolk last year. What was it, like 28-13? Norfolk came in and played tough. The quarterback is back. He had a solid game last week against Hampton. You know, I tell you what, when you talk about Dawson Odoms, he's a good coach. You knew he was going to kind of turn things around and bounce back from that Virginia State win. So we've got a couple of weeks to prepare. I think we match up well against Norfolk State. I think it's a winnable game. It's one of those games that's winnable for A&T as you look, sort of look down the schedule, not looking too far ahead, but it's definitely one of those winnable games for the Aggies.
Well, it's one of those games down where you almost have to win, because I think, Billy, you talked about earlier in terms of, attitude, guys getting down, getting disappointed. And, we have a week to get ready. So it's going to be really an important game when we go up to play Norfolk State because, again, I think it's one of these games where we're going to have to get a win if we're going to be able to move forward during the rest of the season.
One of the things that I can appreciate is the Aggie fans were here tonight. They were here in abundance. They were last week, a week before last, they were in Alabama. And tonight they filled up the entire Aggie side. The band did an outstanding job. And, a lot of Aggies are going to Norfolk when they take on Norfolk State in a couple of weeks. So thank you, fans, for following the Aggies. And, we're going to get better. That's just the bottom line to it.
Darryl, excuse me. Another thing, even though we got pushed around, on a positive note, I tell you that defense never quit. They never gave up. I mean, they gave you all that they had for the entire ball game, and I mean they were taking a physical beating out there. But in terms of their heart and their effort, they didn't roll over. They gave it all they had, and so. I mean, that is something from a coaching point that, you hopefully can build on as the season progresses.
Darryl mentioned that there were only 6 first downs. The defense was on the field over half the game, which is true. And he says something has to change on offense, and they'll have, hopefully some time to address it. And the game's going to be at Norfolk State. But again, 2 weeks to address those issues and head to Norfolk for what is truly a winnable football game.
Well, there's no doubt about it. Down from a passing point of view, we are definitely out of sync. I mean, you can't avoid that. I mean, the effort, not necessarily the effort, but the timing between the quarterback and the receivers. A lot of times they're not on the same page. The receivers are running deep routes and the ball is being thrown short. Sometimes the receivers are running short routes and the ball is being thrown deep. Now, cause for that, we really don't know, but that's something that they have got to get both the quarterback and the receivers on the same page if they're going to improve this passing attack.
And that would open up the running game.
Yes, of course.
You stack that box with 8 people. You can't run, and if you can't pass, then that's a difficult situation. But we just got to continue plugging and hope for the best and hope that it gets better.
Chris asks a question, says, how would you all grade the offensive and defensive coordinator? I mean, it's an incomplete grade. It's 3 games into the season. Now the offensive coordinator and the coach don't play the game. You got 3 drop passes out here. Now I realize, we can, people may disagree with some of the play calling. That's fine. But there were some plays to be made out on this field that the coaches don't go out on the field and play.
No, I agree 100%, Donal. And, having coached myself for a long period of time, it is not a very easy thing to do. I mean, because sometimes, you want to do certain things, but, you just don't have the necessary tools. As we always said back in the day, if you're going to make chicken salad, you got to have some chicken. You can't make chicken salad out of hamburger. Now, I'm not saying that as a negative thing against the Aggie players. That's not my point. But my point is that a lot of times as a coach, you can see things and you can want to do things. But as you said, Don, you're not playing. The players have to carry out the the plans that you lay out there for them. And it's going to take time, but I have all the confidence in the world that the Ag is going to get back on the right track.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's plenty of conversation. Paulie doesn't think we have a winnable game on the schedule. Everybody's kind of coming for us. We are that team's winnable game. Okay, I mean, that may be fair. I still think that Norfolk, you look at, and it's the next game,
right?
On top of that, you got a couple of weeks, but I mean, that's a fair statement. So, Aggie fans very passionate. We like that. But again, I think you have to preach patience here. It's 3 games into the season. Coaching staff still trying to get to learn players and vice versa. It's not making excuses. It's what it is. Did A&T play well tonight? No, it did not play well tonight. But the fact of the matter is, Elon's got a good football team too.
And as you said, it's it's really gonna take patience. But historically speaking, Aggie fans sometimes don't have a lot of patience, man. And I mean that's understandable because they're very passionate about their football at Aggie Land, but it's definitely that's what it's going to take because it's going to be a tougher year. I mean, we're going to play some teams that from a standpoint of talent, we're going to have a hard time matching them, and so maybe as someone said, when Coach Brown can bring in the guys that he wants to bring in, we might see a change. But I like what you said, Donal. It's a process. That's what it is. And sometimes when you go through a process, there are growing pains, and it's just something that we're going to have to live with.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we want you to kind of keep this thing going as we get ready to wrap it up. We appreciate all of the fans, the A&T fans, and everybody that made comments to the chat. Again, we'll try to answer as many as we can within the time allotted. So before we get out of here, Al, any last words?
Well, it was very disappointing loss for A&T. I'm sure everybody, including the fans and the coaching staff and the players, expected to play better. But for some, it was just a very, very tough night. You can't give up. It's a long season. We got on the positive side, we got a week off. We can address some issues and hopefully come out against Norfolk State and see a whole different outcome.
I know George says Elon wasn't a good team. They ran the ball well. I mean, this kid, Jalen Hampton, I realize quarterback play may not have been great. He was great. And he's, had over 1,000 yards last year, had some, that guy ran the football hard.
He did.
Any last words, Billy?
We got 2 weeks. We're going to see some improvement. Hopefully we'll see some improvement from our first 3 games, and improvement will be better when we have 2 weeks of solid practice, make sure everybody's there and on time, and see if we can rectify this situation that we're under right now. So I'm looking for a better effort from the Aggies when we head to Norfolk to take on Mr. Olin and the Spartans.
No doubt about it. So Aggie fans, kind of keep it coming. We're going to do this each and every week with the post-game show right here as you're watching on the A&T Facebook or Athletics Facebook page, and then the A&T Athletics YouTube page as well. We appreciate the passion, appreciate your support, and we look forward to being in Norfolk in a couple of weeks. We look forward to seeing you out there. We know in that Tidewater area, not only are the Aggie fans going to travel from Greensboro, that Tidewater area is full of Aggies. So we know that there are going to be a bunch of Aggies in that place. That place holds 30,000 people. So it'd be nice to have about 5 to 7,000 Aggie fans in that place cheering on your Aggie football team. We're going to get ready to wrap it up here from Rhodes Stadium. Thank you for joining us on the post-game show. We want to thank our man Dez back at the studios of the Aggie Sports Radio Network for all of his outstanding work. For Al Swann and Billy Covington, I'm Donal Ware saying so long for now from Rhodes Stadium on the campus of Elon University. Your final score, Elon 27, North Carolina A&T 3. You've been listening and watching the Aggie post-game show right here on the Aggie Sports Radio Network.